Thank you, Chair. I can confirm you're live on YouTube.
Right, good afternoon. Thank you for attending this meeting of the West Norfolk and Kings Lynn Museums Area Committee. No, I'll get that in the right order. Anyway, thank you. The Democratic Services Officer will now conduct a roll call to check who is present at the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bland?
I'm present.
Councillor Bubb?
Present.
Councillor DeWally?
Present.
Councillor Kemp?
Present.
Mr. Bill Davison?
Yeah.
County Councillor Leslie Bambridge?
Present.
County Councillor Chenery Forsborough?
Present.
County Councillor Dawson? No, he's not present. Councillor J Ward?
Present.
Councillor R Kybird? Don't know. No, he's not present. Miss Lindsay Bavin? Present. Oliver Bone? Present. Philip Eek? That's not currently present in the meeting. Dr. Robin Hanley? And that is everyone, Chair.
Thank you. Please may I remind members that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live via YouTube. By attending this meeting, you are giving your permission to be recorded and streamed. Members should ensure that during the meeting, microphones are turned off until they are invited by the chair to address the committee. When addressing the committee, can you please state your name first so that all those present know who is speaking? Please speak clearly, concisely, and get straight to the point. Please refer to the page number on the agenda which you are addressing the committee about. Do we have an apologies for absence?
I haven't received any apologies for absence, Chair, but not in the meeting is County Councillor Dawson, Councillor Kybird, and we're currently waiting on Philip Eek to join us.
All right. Minutes of the previous meeting were with your agenda. Do you agree with the minutes? Not agree with the minutes.
I was at the meeting, but I wasn't recorded as being present. John Moore.
All right. Can we address that? Any matters arising from the minutes? Any declarations of interest? If you think of something during the various items on the agenda, say then, or if you've got an interest now, yes, please.
Chairman, I'm a trustee of Trews Yard.
Chairman, since the last meeting that we had, I've become a trustee of Trews Yard. And there is mention under, it's non-pecuniary, by the way, there is mention of the Kings Lynn Walsingham Way, and I'm going to be involved in that, but that's not part of the museum, it's one of the reports that's on the agenda.
Okay, so item number 5, report of the Assistant Head of Museums, please.
So for these purposes, I'm going to give a report of activities at the Lynn Museum for the period covered by September to November 2023. And my name is Oliver Bone, and I'm the curator of the Lynn Museum and also the museum at Thetford. So you have before you a report of this activity, and item 1, just a reminder that we're still wanting to be careful with the infection control for COVID-19, but also other infectious diseases, and we have the measures in place listed in the report. Item 2 refers to exhibitions and events at Lynn Museum, and our current exhibition, which many members were able to get to, is the Tiger Who Came to Tea. This is a hired-in exhibition linked to our taxidermy tiger, Horace, which has resided at the museum for nearly 100 years and welcomes visitors to the Lynn Museum. And the Tiger Who Came to Tea is an exhibition featuring the work of writer Judith Kerr, who had her centenary last year, And the illustrations in the report show the opening event that took place in November. There's also a display of some of our shop items related to the exhibition and the children's book. And I understand that the shop is doing very well. The exhibition is also doing extremely well, and we were particularly popular and busy between Christmas and New Year, which is sometimes a quiet period. So that's been brilliant. Yes, very pleased with this exhibition. It's on until the 20th of January, so there's several more weeks of its run for people to come and see and enjoy. Covered by the report period, we also had the end of the Hoards exhibition, which was an opportunity to display a number of hoards, making an archaeological timeline of buried hoards that have been discovered in the Kings Lynn, West Norfolk area. And again, this was a popular exhibition and has helped contribute to the good visitor numbers, which we'll come to at the end of the reporting. One of the good things with this exhibition has been an opportunity to display some of the recent acquisitions to the museum collections, which we've been able to acquire through various grant sources, including the Museum Friends, the V&A Purchase Fund, National Lottery Heritage Fund, and also the Headley Trust. So it's nice to be able to give these interesting artefacts an airing at the museum. It's also an opportunity to link to our programming, and we were very pleased to welcome some distinguished speakers who were able to explain about some of the local archaeology. In October, Professor Michael Lewis, who's in charge of the Portable Antiquities Scheme and the treasure process at the British Museum, he also comes from Kings Lynn, so it was rather nice to welcome him back to the town. And he gave a very good talk. And following discussion with Michael, we're planning to do an updated version of the publication of the excellent Kings Lynn Pilgrim Badge collection. And we're planning days when we can have the badges photographed to current standards, and there will be a publication to come. I'm not quite sure when it's going to be, but it will see the light of day in the future. And talking of publications, with the Hoards exhibition, a legacy of the exhibition will be a publication working with Dr. Adrian Marsden, who works for his colleague within the County Council, and he will provide we're working with him on a book about the Hoards exhibition, which, as I say in the report, will serve as a legacy for the exhibition as it's now finished. And then our forthcoming exhibitions, we've got the Moon exhibition opening in February, and we're going to have an opening event on the date for the diary, 2:30 on Tuesday, the 6th of February. Don't think that Monday, the 3rd of February actually exists, but it's the opening event's going to be Tuesday, the 6th of February at 2:30, and members of the committee are very welcome to join us for that event. And it's an opportunity in this report to say a big thank you to the Shared Prosperity Fund administered through the Borough Council for a grant towards this project, which is a hired-in exhibition and will supplement Moon-related items in the museum collections. It includes a 3-metre across model of the Moon, and we're going to be displaying that in the excellent high ceiling space of the old chapel where the museum resides. So looking forward to that one. And then looking further ahead into the autumn, we'll have as reported previously to this committee, we're planning a dogs-related exhibition. We're calling Woof, and we'll draw upon multidisciplinary collections to tell the story of dogs through time and space. And then, as usual, we have a variety of family events, we have family trails, we have activities for young children, we call mini museum, and the tiger themed exhibition we have currently has been very popular. We had to double up on the day that we had our mini museum for the tiger who came to tea. And also within this report, coffee mornings we have once a month, and Heritage Open Day, which was a very, if you remember it, in early September, it was a very hot day, and hard to imagine at the moment, but the air conditioning in the museum, it was a bonus, and people enjoyed the cool when they came into the museum. And we had lots of visitors, 552 visitors that day, which was great. I can pause there if that's helpful. If there are any questions at the end of section 2, before I go on to section 3. Questions?
That's it. Sort of cataracts. I'm using one eye at the moment. When I saw wolf, I read wolf. So one question I'm going to ask you: when was the last time a wolf was seen or hunted in East Anglia or this area? Because I know the last one was shot in Scotland, north, way north of Inverness. But when it was on a lay-by on the A9 heading north. But when the road was redesigned and moved, where the wolf died also moved as well. So where do you think the last wolf was seen here?
I don't know the exact answers to that. There may be someone in the room who knows, but my guess is that it's going to be something like the 16th century, but I don't know for sure. We will be featuring a taxidermy wolf in the exhibition, so we will have further information about wolves in Norfolk as part of what we display. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. John Ward, I was just going to ask again about celebration dogs. I wonder if we will be allowing people to bring their dogs to the opening of the exhibition. My Labrador would like to come.
That's a very good question. We had thought that it was probably going to be the dogs who provide like a guide dog or a hearing dog that we would allow into the museum as we normally do, assistance dogs. I don't know. That's a good thought. I don't really know. I'm going to look towards Robin for support on this one.
Thank you, Oliver. Nicely played. So yeah, Robin Handley, Assistant Head of Norfolk Museum Service. It will involve a careful conversation with our conservation colleagues, I think is the answer to that one, John. So as Oliver said, we normally allow, as you would expect, assistance dogs into our sites. Obviously, the concern with other dogs is around the potential inadvertent introduction of pests that can then cause problems for our collections. So mindful this exhibition is celebrating all things dog, though it's probably a question we will ask. I suspect I know what the answer will be, but we will ask the question.
I was discussing various things in our local library and then discovered that they knew nothing about the Tiger Who Came to Tea exhibition. And I would have thought library, museum, you might have talked to each other about it and perhaps sent your poster out to promote it. We've not got the only library in the region in Dersingham. We've got them in Hunstanton, Lynn here, Downham, various places. And apparently there's a daily van delivery, so stuff can go around quite easily. So could we not think about advertising some of these exhibitions amongst ourselves, the libraries and the museums, to get more people along?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you, it's like pause because I was writing that down. I think we can always do better at advertising, and we should certainly have good information at our library colleagues around the district. So yes, most definitely. That's a very good thought. Thank you.
Yes. Are we helping as many people as possible attend the coffee mornings? I know some time ago we talked about people with dementia and carers, and of course then we had lockdown and things wouldn't have been possible. But are we managing to get a diversity and different backgrounds of people in, particularly people from care homes, maybe, if that's possible?
We do have good links with some of the local care homes, and we have had residents come in the past, and it's something again we could work on and try and encourage more visits in that way. Yes, you're right. It's a very good thought.
Any more questions on that section? Leslie?
Mine isn't a question, but I just want to say I've enjoyed the exhibitions very much. I love the hoards. I was fascinated by the actual well, the man that found stone Seahenge was there, and he was very interesting. But I loved the display; it was excellent, and the illustrations for the tiger that came to tea were beautiful, weren't they? I think underrated, possibly, because you don't see them close up like that, and she was very good. Thank you.
Ray, continue.
So item.
Thank you. Mine possibly not particularly pertinent, but just thinking in terms of moon and dogs and potential lycanthropy. Are there any belief systems going to be involved in the dog exhibition? Because obviously they've come along with us as a civilization and been quite involved in our pre-Christian beliefs. Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite understand.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. I was thinking moon, dogs and werewolves, but there are myths and legends associated with dogs and early pagan beliefs. And I was just wondering whether there was anything in the dog exhibition about early beliefs. Thank you.
Yes, the dogs theme is wonderfully wide-ranging, so we're able to sort of incorporate a number of different aspects. So we're thinking about the natural history of dogs, and that's where the wolf comes in. We're thinking about companion dogs. We're thinking about working dogs. I think something around the folklore and the Robin just mentioned to be black shuck and some of the other folklore related to and mythology related to dogs. I think it's very interesting. So lots of opportunities, even if we can't incorporate it into the exhibition, if we're able to have it as part of our talks program or other media for content delivery in terms of social media, websites and other ways, I think it's a very good thought. Yes, I think people would be very interested.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just add to that, members may remember the project that we worked on a few years ago as part of our work with the Fenland Museum Partnership, which Fenland Stories, which was all around exploring the sort of myths and legends attached to the Fens, of which there are many, including Black Shuck and Will o' the Wisps and all those other really sort of interesting characters. So there's a real potential to sort of explore that and build on that work, because that was particularly engaging with schools, with young people. And we actually did some really interesting animated films that were produced with groups of young people, giving a sort of their twist on some of these tales. So yes, I'm sure that will feature within the exhibition.
So if we come to item 3, where I report on the legacy that has been left to the museum from the generosity of Eric and Rita Newman. And our focus for this at the moment is on a collections access project, the Newman Collections Access Project. We're building up to really get cracking this year on this project. It's going to be looking at the large collections for the borough, for the town, for the museum, a number of which are stored in the town, and several members of the committee were able to visit recently to see collections at the museum store. We've got a new assistant curator position, Jan Summerfield, who comes with lots of experience in stores work. We're going to be recruiting volunteers and also a trainee program, which I'll come to shortly, with several. It's a labour-intensive job, photographing, auditing, researching, documenting collections. But this is the sort of the base rock, the important sort of baseline for museum work. You need to know well what you've got, what condition it's in, and then through various different means, including the Norfolk Collections website, we'll be able to share this information for the greater good, really, for anyone interested in local history. And it'll also help us source material for future exhibitions and other display uses as well. So we're delighted that we're being able to do this. And it's only through this legacy that we've been able to have this opportunity to do so. Moving on to section 4, other museum developments. We have good social media for the museum, which now includes Instagram, excellent for photographs, very good for our wonderful photograph collection. I show here in the report an illustration of a tweet from Professor Michael Lewis, who I mentioned before, of one of the Walsingham badges, pilgrim badges in the museum collection. And as I mentioned, we're going to be working with Michael on a publication and photography project around the badge collection. And also for digital media, item 4.5 on page 18, we have films on YouTube with a YouTube channel, and also online exhibitions through Google Arts and Culture platform. And the Norfolk Collections website is another place where we can do exhibitions, digital exhibitions, and that's something we'll be looking at doing more of. Item 4.7, teaching museum trainees. We're in the process of recruiting at the moment. It's a very popular scheme that the Norfolk Museum Service operates with funding from Arts Council England, and we have had something like 400 applicants for the 5 positions in the museum service. We'll have one dedicated to the Newman Collections Development Project, helping to provide access, and there'll be another trainee who'll be working across Thetford and King's Lynn, and will be part of the manpower, the people power to make this project work well. And we look forward to welcoming them in early April. We've got to sift through all these hundreds of applications first, but looking forward to the process and looking forward to the new people starting. Then if we move on to section 5, and Robin is poised to say something about the partnership work that we do.
Thank you, Oliver. Just very briefly to obviously remind members of this committee that we continue to work really closely with colleagues within the Borough Council through our service level agreements and other activities. And we are working with the Guildhall project team to support the development of plans for the St George's Guildhall, with NMS colleagues taking a particular lead around project interpretation, and also through the currently vacant learning engagement role based at King's Lynn Town Hall, supporting learning and informal learning activities, both on this site, but also linked into the Guildhall as well as other projects across the town. And just to update members that following the departure of Rachel Williams, we are currently recruiting for a replacement for Rachel's role. She'll be a hard act to follow. And that role is co-funded through our Kick the Dust programmes, but also through the Borough Council. So we're very grateful for the Borough Council's continuing support. And that post will continue to be based here in Kings Lynn Town Hall, and will continue to support borough projects across the town. So we'll keep members informed about that particular piece of recruitment. In terms of supporting the Guildhall project, I'm on the project board. One of our project officers, Jenny Keynes, continues to support the project team, in addition to the work around interpretation that I mentioned. Dana Woolbright, our Newman curator based at Lynn Museum, has been busy organising an exhibition as part of the programme of activities at the Guildhall, which will be hosted in the Fermoy Gallery, and that will look at the work of C.T. Page, who was curator of Lynn Museum from 1902 to 1931, and produced a lot of watercolours of the town. So this will be a sort of early opportunity for people to come and explore his work, celebrating the built heritage of Kings Lynn. So that will be opening on the 15th of February and will run through until the 20th of April. So that's a really good example of the way in which Norfolk Museum Service teams are working closely with borough colleagues, not just in this building, but also to support work in the Guildhall. The other thing to remind members, of course, is under the existing service level agreement, we continue to offer free admission to the Lynn Museum from October through until the end of March. So we're in that free admission period now. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand back to Oliver at that point.
Any questions on that segment? Yes, Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm interested in the Kick the Dust and getting young people to work alongside professionals and enhancing their digital skills. I understand there's still quite a backlog of archival work. Is that something that will be included in those opportunities?
Yeah. So in terms of opportunities to work with collections, absolutely. So as Oliver mentioned, as part of the programme work plan to improve the collections management information about the collections here in Kings Lynn, we're looking at opportunities to involve both volunteers and young people in that programme, not only in terms of the documentation and digitisation of the collections to then make them available through the website, but also to look at how those collections can then be used in creative ways, whether it's around creating digital content, social media. So we're expecting to see a number of opportunities for young people to not only get involved in the sort of the real sort of detailed work around cataloguing and understanding our collections more fully and making that information accessible, but also then being creative about how you can then use that new information to make it engaging to other young people and a broader range of audiences. So it's those two things happening hand in hand.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair.
With the YouTube channel, do we derive any income from that?
No, we don't. It's a sort of advocacy and marketing route for us.
Okay. Learning and outreach.
Thank you. The museum team has been very busy with school groups visiting, and you can see in the report the wide variety of different topics that are covered, historical topics that people can learn about from their visits to the museum. We've got a very good team who do the delivery. These include in-house staff as well as freelancers who brought in to help with the sessions, and an excellent learning officer who is very creative in making these new sessions appealing and interesting for children when they come to visit. There is a link in the report which explains a bit more if you're interested to find out more about the work. Typically for Key Stage 2, although Key Stage 1 and reception are also covered, and less frequently secondary school pupils for the museum for various reasons. And yes, that's just a very brief overview on learning and outreach. It's a big area, it's a big focus for our work. We get maybe 2 or 3 school visits a week at the museum, and it's great to see, you know, children learning in the museum in various ways. And I think that rather brief report, I'm going to turn back to Robin for the Kick the Dust update, the exciting new aspects.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. So page 20 of the report, you've got the sort of regular update on our Kick the Dust activity, and I know members are very familiar with this programme now. It's the vehicle by which we work with young people in the age range 11 to 25, but with a particular focus on young people aged 16 to 25, who are normally those sorts of young people who don't have the opportunity to engage with heritage. So working as, again, members are very familiar with partners such as YMCA Norfolk. So as with previous reports to this committee, I've given you quite a bit of detail in this report about activity that's been taking place. A reminder in the first section of the previous Kick the Dust programme that ran from 2018 through to March 2023, funded principally through the National Tree Heritage Fund, which worked with around 5,500 individual young people with about 14,000 individual interventions. So that's the background. And then obviously, as members again are aware, we're now delivering the new 3-year programme funded principally through Arts Council England, which is focused on the levelling up priority places of Great Yarmouth, Thetford and Kings Lynn. And obviously the post that Rachel Williams had previously held was central to the delivery of Kick the Dust activities here in Kings Lynn. I mentioned that we are actively recruiting to Rachel's role. What I should also say is that we are covering in the meantime activities in Kings Lynn. So one of our other Kick the Dust project workers, Rachel Duffield, has been supporting the Time Turner group, for example, based here in Kings Lynn. And they're already working on creating a little exhibition linked to the Moon show at Lynn Museum, which Oliver mentioned. So members may be aware there's a display case and reception area at Lynn Museum. So the Time Turner group, supported by Rachel, are actually creating a display to go into that case that links into the Moon exhibition. So it's, again, it'll be their slant on that story. So we've been keeping things ticking over in Kings Lynn since Rachel departed, but obviously getting the right candidate into that role as soon as possible is really important. But county-wide, as we discussed last time, obviously a lot of focus around young people's mental health and well-being. We've provided in the report the details of participation to date, mindful that we're still in the relatively early stages of the new Arts Council funded programme, but we are continuing to work with a very broad range of young people, many of whom are facing significant challenges in their lives. If members wanted to sort of explore some of the project case studies of work that we've been doing with Kick the Dust, I've put in the link to the Kick the Dust webpage. And if you go to that webpage, you can actually have a look at some of the projects that are running across the service that sort of give a flavour of the really broad range of activity that young people can get involved with, and the way in which activity is tailored very much to meet the needs of individual young people. So I'll leave members to sort of study that report at their depth. in their own time. Once again, page 27, we've included a number of quotes from young people who've been involved with the programme, just to give their perspective on how we're working. We continue to involve young people in the Kick the Dust steering group that I chair, and they continue to play an active part, not only in participating in project activities, but also designing and shaping them as well. And over 70% of activities that are running at the moment are designed and led by young people, which is exactly the way that it should be. The other thing to update members on at the bottom, page 27, is around the new funding bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund for the project called Your Heritage, Your Future. This is in its development phase, so we, as members are aware, I think, we've secured round one funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund for a new 4-year project working with YMCA Leicestershire that will see us building on the work we did through Kick the Dust, working with museums across the East of England and East Midlands. At this point, we're in our development phase, and if the second round bid is successful, we'll be then looking at 4 years of activity commencing in the autumn of this year. During this development phase, we're actually piloting a number of the activities that we would expect to be implementing during the delivery phase. So that we've been piloting a number of specialist training courses. We've also been piloting some paid internships, and Lindsay and Truesdale are hosting the pilot traineeship for the East of England. And Shannon's been working with Lindsay and her colleagues for some time now, and we're sort of using that to really test out how these sorts of paid traineeships can work, particularly in the context of museums that perhaps don't, traditionally work in that way. We're interested to explore the sorts of barriers museums are facing to support their work with young people, and look to then mitigate those barriers as much as possible in the project. So this pilot phase is really instructive, and it will make sure that the project, if we secure the second round of funding, is one we can be confident that we can deliver, because we've already tested a number of the delivery mechanisms. So very grateful to Lindsay and her colleagues for supporting the project, and we'll continue to report to members of this committee going forward. But we're looking to submit the round 2 funding application at the end of May of this year. Thank you, Chair, and I'll hand back to Oliver for the visitor figures.
Anyone got anything on that segment? Mr. Davis.
Yeah. What an excellent report, and I think congratulations are in order. There's only one thing that actually, in answer to the YouTube thing, I think actually doing that in itself helps to apply for funding in the future. When you apply for funding, every organisation wants to know what you're going to do, and if you're doing things with especially on information, it's always very useful. But one thing that always I find lacking in reports like this, and that is, especially about the history of Lynn, is that there's not enough of the industrial past of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. And the reason why I mention that is because the purpose, the idea of museums is to explain to people why we are today, what the future, what the past was, and how that has molded us today, and how an industry has shaped the area where we are. And I think, especially for young people, they need to know why we are here today, why the situation as it is, and why those industries now, some of them have gone, some of them have increased, but they've all left the mark on where we live. If you look at the communities, the West Lynns, the North Lynns, the South Lynns, all been around things like the cannon industry. And I never hear that mentioned once. And I think that's an important part of our heritage.
Chair, if I can start, I think that's a really good point. And, Kings Lynn's, industrial heritage is really important. And I think in the permanent displays, for example, of the Lynn Museum, I think it is something we reflect on. But going back to the question earlier around engaging people with that sort of collections documentation task, one of the areas of collection that will be a focus for that work is the Savages collection, which in terms of Lynn's, perhaps in some cases forgotten engineering heritage, that's a really important collection, absolutely, and dominant. We have within Kings Lynn, whether it's in terms of the artefacts or the archive collections, or in partnership in many cases with both the Borough Archives here and the Norfolk Record Office, a fantastic resource. And if you go into the Lynn Museum now, there's obviously displays around Savages, and Savages' story is a regular focus for activities. But we were talking earlier this morning actually to Dana Woolbright, the curator who's going to be leading that project, about the opportunities to engage young people and new audiences with the really fascinating Savages story as part of this project to improve the collections documentation and make it more accessible, because it never ceases to amaze me that the fact that and lots of people drive past that statue of Frederick Savage near the South Gate every day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the fact that you had this extraordinarily innovative industrial sort of expertise here in Lynn, where they were doing everything from making farm machinery to fairground rides to World War I fighter planes. I mean, quite extraordinary on a very tiny little works. And that, as you say, with Dodman's and some of the other industrial sites, and in more recent years, Campbell's and so on, it's a really rich heritage. And we do reflect that within the permanent galleries, and it does feature within our events and learning programs. But there's always opportunities, I think, to really sort of promote that sometimes forgotten past of Lynn's heritage. Absolutely.
Can I just add that if you mentioned the Savages collection, and I know for a fact, not only how do we have artifacts what they made, but there's also all the drawings, what they did, and also the ledger and all the pay, the apprentices, what they were paid, math, every trade. And I think that's big. That would be a great asset to young people, especially, so they can compare with what it's like now.
The Savages collection is extraordinary, as I say, and it does include, as you mentioned, the engineering drawings, and we do periodically get still inquiries from people who are needing to replicate parts of the working Savages fairground rides. We also have it in our collection store, the wooden patterns that were used to create the individual parts. And taking something like an engineering drawing, it's really important as part of our documentation processes that we make sure that's a really high quality record with a good digital image that can then be accessed remotely. But also, let's say for a young person working on that piece of documentation, the opportunity for then the design to spring it to the page and then to do something really creative with it. So even with what might seem fairly mundane things like an engineering drawing, the opportunities to then use that creatively are quite significant. So those are the wins we'll be looking for. And you're absolutely right. It's an extraordinary collection, and I know that Oliver and Dana have, been very sort of anxious to sort of maximise its potential. But again, it is an important part of the existing displays at Lynn Museum, and it's such an important part of the history of the town.
Well, we've seen one good example at Truesdale today of how industry is shaped, as we've seen the power the fishing industry has played. But there's a lot more to Kings Lynn. Heck of a lot more.
And I think there you've got also opportunities around things like digital exhibitions. So there is already an online digital exhibition around Lynn's whaling heritage produced by the team at Kings Lynn. So, where we can sort of identify these stories, you then want to make sure they have a life beyond just a single exhibition. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, Lynn's an extraordinary place, isn't it? And the heritage is so rich and diverse, and so much of it is forgotten.
I was looking at your reports last night, and it occurred to me that for those who haven't got their own transport, how do Kick the Dust people get to Gressenhall? Is there some assistance for them? Because it's not exactly like King's Lynn. You get off the bus and there you are. It's pretty isolated.
So absolutely. So yes, we are very aware within those sorts of projects about the need to facilitate access. So and in some cases that will include support around transport, and it's about removing barriers to enable young people to participate. And sometimes in a site like Gressenhall, it's not always assuming that they come to you. It's also about being creative about venues that you use. So the current Kick the Dust project that we're working on is working very closely with libraries, and we're now using library locations as well, which are often very well placed in the heart of their community. But you're quite right, looking at barriers to access, of which transport can be quite a significant one in a rural county like Norfolk, has always been very much a part of how activities has been planned with our Kick the Dust work.
Michael, yes.
Something I didn't attend and I wanted to, but I was going to do it on the last day, but the floods we were overcome by flooding. Because I had very difficulty getting back home. The Gressenhall, you did a Victorian Christmas. How successful was that? Because that's something I wanted to see. And has it ended? Because if you don't take decorations down on Epiphany, you can carry on to the February the 2nd canvas. And that's the church has sanctioned that. Now, was it a successful? And if so, could that be done in King's Lynn? Because that's interests a lot of people. Victorian Christmas. There's been quite a few books written on it in East Anglia. How successful was it? And could that be done here? But not everybody can get to Gressenhall.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
I couldn't get there either the other day because of the road was closed.
So for the benefit of members, we at Gressenhall Museum, Farmhouse Museum, hosted a Victorian family event just before Christmas, which was a sort of pre-booked event where people could come to the site and celebrate a sort of Victorian Christmas. And obviously Gressenhall as a workhouse is a very particular ambience to support that type of activity. So I'm pleased to report that pre-booked event was sold out, and we're certainly looking to replicate that at Gressenhall next year. At other sites around the service, obviously each site is different, and we have, as I'm sure members would expect, run a whole range of different types of Christmas activities. In terms of more sort of Christmas experiences, like the Gressenhall one, Strangers Hall, we have run a number of Christmas experiences, family groups at Strangers Hall. This year's included a candle lit tour of Strangers Hall with LED candles, I should hasten to add, because of the fire risk. But using sites creatively and making the most of their individual atmosphere is all part of that. So in terms of a Gressenhall type Victorian Christmas event, I suspect Lynn Museum would not be ideally suited, but some of the venues such as the Town Hall or spaces like the Guildhall would lend themselves much better. So I think it's about identifying the strengths of your particular site and then using them creatively. So for sites that don't have the sort of the natural ambience, if you like, for a more experience-based activity, it's then looking at what else you can offer for Christmas audiences. And we were really pleased, actually, and Oliver's touched on this already, at the really good numbers of visitors we saw between Christmas and New Year at sites across the service, actually, and Lynn Museum is a really good example of that. So it's about offering absolutely some tailored Christmas events, but it's also ensuring that you've got a consistent, good sort of quality offer for families who sometimes want a bit of a escape from Christmas for half an hour. And exhibitions like the Tiger Came to Tea is a really good example of that. So it's something we're looking at every year in terms of making the most of the sites. We'd certainly expect to run the Gressenhall Christmas event again next year. So hopefully you'll get a chance to come along next year. It is a very special event, but we have lots of special events and activities running across the service. And one of the real strengths of Norfolk Museum Service is the fact we have such diversity within our sites, and that, you know, and that's a real strength for us. So it won't be the same at every site, but it's about each site playing to its strengths.
Can I possibly make a question? Had a Christmas tree there. Was it lit with real candles, or did you cheat?
Well, it's a bit like the dogs question, actually, because we're always very aware of risks to our collections and our buildings, whether it's from dog-borne risks or whether it's a fire. So, you know, we always try to create the right atmosphere, absolutely. So the Christmas tree at Gresson Hall was in the chapel, which is a very sort of atmospheric space, and it looked really smart. It was sort of artificially lit. But I think it's fair to say, actually, that the technology has really come on in terms of really convincing LED candle effects. I mean, when they first came out, they were not great, frankly, but actually now you can create a really convincing candlelit atmosphere whilst not incurring the risks of having naked flames in historic buildings full of valuable collections. So you can actually create a really good atmosphere, but doing it in a safe way, and that's really great. And again, I think the candlelit evening at Strangers is a really good example of how you can do that and give visitors a really special experience, but not putting your collections or buildings at immediate risk.
Sure. Have any young people in care attending Kick the Dust? There are care leavers, but not young people in care. I just wondered to what extent we're trying to promote this. Obviously, people have got different interests, but bearing in mind the results, young people that have been on the course, it increases optimism about the future, feeling useful, thinking clearly, being able to make mind about things. That seems to be really, really good, something we ought to be pushing.
No, it's a very good question, and we do work really closely with colleagues in children's services. So there's a regular working group, which is chaired by Christine Morrison, who you know, of course, who's the coordinator of Kick the Dust across the county. And Christine chairs that meeting. It brings together colleagues from children's services and other organisations and other parts of Norfolk County Council to look at opportunities to sort of make sure that Kick the Dust gets into all the corners. So that's something, you know, so I'm confident we do have those right connections, but we can always do more, of course.
Leslie, you've got a pen up.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to comment on Savage because the most important thing about him was that he started off working doing the drainage of the fens, and he obviously was a very bright person without any qualifications and went to work for a whitesmith and then took over the business. So that's how he started. But last year, it was during the Mart time, there was an impromptu exhibition held in the foyer of the Corn Exchange. And somebody had come along with some photographs of Savage's workshops and factory, and I mean, they were obviously later than because of the photographs, and he was just somebody that was interested, and he just came with some boards and put them up, and I was dragged in to see it, but I was pleased that I had. So there are opportunities like that to link it in when the Mart is on, to do something in a venue where the doors are locked at night time, etc. So the exhibits would be safe. Something perhaps to look at, especially as he was such an important person. When I was mentoring some young people at what is now the Academy, King's Lynn Academy, we were in the library and I showed them some of the books that were in the library, and there were wonderful books of Savage and the Gallopers. And they didn't even know. I mean, you know, that was a very local school, and they'd never heard of Savage. And it's like the statue. People don't know where his statue is in King's Lynn. But the more we can do for that. But the idea of having some pop-up exhibitions could be done. I'm sure the Corn Exchange would be in agreement with it.
Oliver, you want to say something?
I was going to, I mean, I think that's brilliant. And yes, the more we can do to celebrate the contribution of Savage, and I think the personal stories of people like him through their sort of lack of educational qualification, I think is very interesting, and how his perseverance and drive has led him to where he met his great success. I was going to come to the visitor figures, which I think is the last item on the agenda. So I've dished out a printout of the latest that we have, which is up until the end of November. And I just looking at this just now and thinking that it's a bit of a sort of time capsule with the effects of COVID and sort of recovering from COVID, isn't it, in a way, from the blue 2021-22 figures, where in April there were 0 visitors to the to nearly all of the museums apart from Gressonall, which was able to offer open air activity, I think. So looking at this year, this financial year 23-24, the figures are looking very good actually for Lynn Museum, low down in the table. We're significantly up on where we were this time last year in the figures, and I think it bodes well. I think it's partly the greater interest from schools, it's the success of the exhibition programme, and the I'd like to pay tribute to the team at the museum as well. The visitor services, the reception of visitors to the museum, I think is very good. So yes, it's very pleasing, and hopefully December, January, February and March will also show improvements. That's what we hope.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I could just ask Oliver, that last item on there, Norfolk exhibitions programme, including King's Lynn Town Hall. What else does that include then, please?
So that includes the activities delivered on this site through the work of the Learning Engagement Post that's part of Norfolk Museum Service, but is hosted here at the Borough Council. So where we have kick the dust activities happening on site here that are organised by Norfolk Museum Service, those count within the figures. Those don't include general admissions to the Stories of Lynn exhibition, because that's obviously a Borough Council attraction, and it has also been used in the past to capture attendances at Norfolk Museum Service organised programmes delivered in other locations. So for example, when the Olividis exhibition was touring different parts of the county, if there was an exhibition with a linked programme that Norfolk Museum Service was running, but in a third-party venue, then those figures were counted. So these figures all have to go through the County Council's audit team. So they're all pretty robust. But yes, broadly, it's capturing activity on site at Stories of Lynn, which is managed by Norfolk Museum Service.
How far back do the attendance figures go?
As far back as you need to, I suspect.
Have we had our millionth visitor yet to Lynn Museum?
That's an interesting question. That sounds like a centenary type question.
Is it something, well, could, if we haven't, if there's one imminent, could we celebrate it with a bit of publicity?
I better start counting, haven't I? Yeah. I did also. Sorry, you may have noticed October and November this year at Lynn Museum show precisely the same figure, 2228. I've just checked with Marlene, our colleague who compiles these figures, and that is correct. That and the totals have come from different directions apparently, but to give the exact same total for those autumn months.
Right. Anything else before? Oh, yes.
Just one. How do you record a minus person? What are you doing with the visitors if they're a minus? There's a -3 and a -1. I just wondered what happened. How did that happen?
I suspect that's a statistical correction by our colleagues.
Right, so we move on to Truesdale. Oh, Leslie, sorry, waving about.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed that for the exhibitions here, that there is a drop. Yet there was a huge increase in 22-23. Do you think there's any particular reason for that drop from 5272? Well, actually, it's the end total.
I
isn't
think
it?
that coincides with Rachel Williams' departure.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, we are maintaining her kick the dust groups on Tickover, but Rachel was also responsible for a lot of the sort of family event type programming here. So as soon as that post is filled, we'd expect those numbers to be coming back up.
Just furthering the historical data question, how, as a percentage roughly, how do we compare pre-pandemic? And congratulations on getting the figures going in the right direction quite, how would you put it, resoundingly. Thank you.
So in terms of the majority of the sites around the service, I think we're now almost back to where we were pre-pandemic in terms of overall attendances. Norwich Castle, obviously, because of the impact of the building projects, that's on reduced numbers, but that should see a big increase once the site reopens. But we are broadly, I think, in working our way back now. Certainly, if you look at national trends, a number of parts of the cultural sector have not seen a return to full pre-pandemic participation levels. I think we're sort of quietly confident that actually numbers across Norfolk Museum Service are getting back. And I think Lynn Museum is a good example of that trend. And if you look at sites across the service, and you can see the figures there, we are getting back in most cases to where we were pretty much before the pandemic. I mean, you do get a lot of variation within sites that can be generated by weather. So if we have really hot weather across the summer holidays, then that will depress visitors. Whereas if you have a very wet summer, it's the reverse. Likewise, with some of the sites, the quality of the programming can see big spikes in visitor numbers. So, for example, when we had the Titanic exhibition on at Time and Tide Museum, we had record-breaking numbers there. So you will get those sort of in-year variances, but I think generally we're approaching the position where we're back to where we were pre-pandemic. But there's a lot of work behind that, and I think we are having to work harder to generate those numbers. And if you look across the cultural sector, as I say more generally, there is a bit of a concern that some of those numbers may never come back.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just one other thing. I wonder why the targets are so low. The actual total target was actually less than the actual for the previous year.
So the targets are reviewed on an annual basis, obviously working with the statistics team. So I would expect, and it sort of links into the conversation we've been having, because I think the last few years in terms of target setting, there have been significant variables at play in terms of likely impact of whether it was the pandemic or cost of living, a number of pressures that can actually then have an impact on overall numbers. So they are a reflection of the time in which those numbers were set, I think, as well. And obviously, as we came out of the pandemic, there was a significant uncertainty around whether we would be seeing another surge of infections this winter, which might then affect visitor numbers. So I would expect to see those targets increasing for the next financial year.
I've got a question, very quick. It's about specific activities that will be on offer for young people and families in the February half term in the museum settings, please.
So all of our sites focus activities on February half term, because historically it's a real peak for us. So without having the detail in front of me, you know, pretty much all of our sites that are open would be offering sort of family-friendly programs during the February half term period, because historically it's been a real sort of peak for us, a bit like October half term. I think it's the time of year when people are looking for creative things to do. A number of our sites continue to support the holiday activity fund programs, obviously run through the County Council's Active Norfolk scheme. But yes, we would expect to be delivering February half term. I don't know if Oliver has any detail of what's in store for Lynn Museum.
Right. One more, Mr. Davis down the end there.
Yes, I was just looking up to get the precise details, but what we typically have a family event day at the museum, and we'll have one of those February half term. We'll have a museum trail for families, which is a popular medium for encouraging intergenerational conversations when people come to visit. And we will have our new exhibition, the Moon exhibition, up for people to enjoy. And through the service level agreements, the Lynn Museum is able to offer free admission. So that financial barrier, we're very lucky at Lynn Museum to be able to have that, to be able to welcome families who are perhaps struggling with the cost of living pressures.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that how pleased I am to see that the figures are getting back. Attendance figures are getting back to pre-COVID levels. And I think it's vitally important now, because local government and all government in general, but especially local government, are going to find it very hard to find funding for any item. And I think cultural services, etc., are going to come under a lot of pressure as far as funding is concerned. So I think we've got to justify everything we get, and we've got to show that people are, it's something that's want to be used. And also, I think it's good that we tie in with education, that the education thing is vital for, again, when we go for funding. I think, because I think increasingly in the future, I could say it's only my view, but I think in the future, we're going to see where we're going to have to raise as much funding ourselves as possible, because I think the pot is not going to be that big as far as national government is concerned, whoever's in.
Okay, all done. Drew's Yard. Thank you very much, Leslie, for showing us around this afternoon. I think most of us have probably been there once before or twice before, but it's good to get a refresh even on that to see what we've got. And you've got a report for us.
Yes, thank you. I understand that it was distributed prior to the meeting, so I'll just pick out a few key areas. So it kind of relates to what was mentioned previously in regards to looking at King's Lynn's industrial history. One of the first exhibitions that we're going to have this year is on the timber trade, which is celebrating, which obviously spans quite a period of history, from the town's Hanseatic links right up until we're actually partnering with Cetra, which is a modern company which is in the timber trade. So that should be a fun one. And obviously we will be distributing invitations to everybody on the Area Museums Committee, who hopefully can attend if you can make it. In terms of another sort of popular one is our Truth Talks programs. Places become available for reservation in our free lunchtime, Thursday lunchtime talks, which span from February to mid-March. Tomorrow they go on sale, although it seems strange to say on sale because it's free. But subjects will include Georgian Lynn, travel in the Middle Ages, Victorian self-help, and we've also got a bonus talk which is going to be on the population of Truesdale, which is including new information which has been gathered from the newly released, well, I say newly released last year, 1921 census. So that should be interesting in terms of one of our other sort of main, well, I'll skip over obviously because it's already been discussed at length, the YMCA Keep the Dust, Your Heritage, Your Future project, and skip into Toasty Trouge Yard, which I mentioned briefly to those who were able to attend the tour, but as mentioned, the cost of living is really biting everybody at the moment. So thanks to funding from Norfolk Community Foundation and Borough Council, we've been able to run our warm space again this year. And we've expanded upon that, and we're offering a breakfast Wednesday to Friday to anybody who needs it, which we're currently advertising. Does anybody have any questions in regards to our report?
No questions, but Paul Richards was bending my ear the other day about the summer art exhibition. I was wondering if some of the nice pictures in the warehouse might be let out to take part in this exhibition during the summer.
Although I'm obviously not privy to what the particulars of the letter or email, I assume. We did last year work with Lynn Museum and potentially loaning 2 paintings. Unfortunately, that did not go ahead in the end. I think one of Dr. Richards' concerns going forward was, especially for small organisations currently under pressure, as mentioned, from increasing costs, is that the cost of loans is quite prohibitive for small organisations. I completely understand the necessity of those costs in terms of transport of loan items and ensuring the protections thereof. I think he was just worried that it might mean that smaller organisations just won't be able to do loans.
Yes, the theme he was raising with me was perhaps it could be done without charge.
So, Chair, if I could just pick up on that. So we, as Lindsay says, we do sort of work, you know, and I think the team in King's Inn have worked very sort of collaboratively with Trouge Yard colleagues and sought to mitigate costs wherever possible. So with that recent example, I know that we have a loans embargo in place at the moment within Norfolk Museum Service because of the pressures on the central team of the preparations for the Norwich Castle project. But because of the special relationship with Trouge Yard, we were still proposing to go ahead with that loan, so that wasn't affected by the embargo. I mean, Ira can talk about the detail perhaps, but in terms of the principles, you know, the teams do work constructively with colleagues such as Trouge Yard. At the end of the day, there are some non-negotiable elements like insurance. So we would expect a lender to have adequate insurance arrangements in place. And I don't think it would be reasonable for us to have to cover the costs of a third party's insurance, for example. But we do whatever we can to mitigate costs, including, I think, in that case, offering to support some of the technician costs. So we always get keen to work collaboratively in partnership with Trouge Yard. The relationship with sites like Trouge Yard is not the same we would have with any other organisation. We do what we can to mitigate costs to them, but at the end of the day, you know, it's very difficult for us to incur all the costs that a third party organisation might incur because we ourselves don't have the budget available to do that, is the reality. I don't know if Oliver wants to comment on the detail of that.
Can we leave you to discuss it between yourselves?
Well, we can, but I think the principle is, you know, would still have to be understood that we do whatever we can. We're very aware of, you know, the pressures on sites like Trouge Yard. We have similar relationships with other, you know, museums across the service, and we're very mindful of the pressures that those sites are under, and, you know, reliance on volunteers and everything else. We fully appreciate that. We do what we can to mitigate costs, and as I say, it's not the same relationship as it would be with another organisation from another part of the country. So, but at the end of the day, there are certain requirements we can't sort of avoid, and it would be unreasonable for us to incur all the costs on the part of the third party.
One other thing before opening up to the other people here, one thing that occurs to me is that you as a museum at Trews Yard are not part of a parish council or a borough council or anything. You could approach your borough councillor who has a fund of £1,000 to distribute for community use, and that could possibly be applied in part to what you might want to fund. It's up to you to apply to the borough councillor for what you want. You can do it online, and then they come to the councillor, say, do you approve of this or not, and then take it from there. But it's a route to get some money.
Yes,
Right.
we've been very fortunate to receive funding from that, and we spent it on a defibrillator.
John.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to ask about the visitor figures. You give the figures for 2023. Were they actually up on the previous year, please?
In terms of, no, we met the previous year, but we did not exceed the previous year.
Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. Paul has raised the same issue with me a couple of months ago, and I raised it with Steve Miller, who is the cultural officer at Norfolk County Council, and he gave me an answer which I have forwarded to Paul, and it's very much what you were saying. So it has been dealt with.
Chair, what I would also add
He
is,
spoke to you, but I had already, he knows that I've already,
He spoke to me at the mayor's at home, so.
oh, goodness. Well, it was before that.
Chair, just to add, what we've also, I know, been able to do is with certain, partners that we want to support, is where the loan of an original work of art, for example, might be prohibited in terms of insurance, we can often facilitate the loan of really good sort of reproductions or digital versions. So there are other routes we can explore if there's a particular reason, whether it's about, and I'm not talking specifically about Trews Yard here, but sometimes we might have a request for a loan where the venue isn't suitable, doesn't have the right security or the right environment. So there may be other options, and we're always happy to explore those with our sort of partner organisations.
Right, did Michael have a hand up? No. Did you have a? Yes.
Just going to ask 5.4, NHS Wellbeing Dungeons and Dragons. Are you working with the NSFT, Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust? They're because we're doing that with the Norfolk Record Office, and they're very interested in getting involved with various issues, things like that, because it'll be good for them, especially with all the problems they've had over the last few years.
No, this
Especially comes to mental health, because that's
this one is specifically with NHS Wellbeing and Norfolk and Wellney. But we're more than happy to have conversations with other partners as well. One of the people we've been talking to lately has been Chesterton House.
Oh, well, yes. I'm a governor of the NSFT, and so I'm very keen working with the trust, especially with our records office. We're doing various projects there, so I will bring that one up, because that's quite interesting. The more they can get involved in, the better. They've gone through a rough time. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Any more for Trews Yard, Leslie? Not the Leslie down there. We all have different names, please.
Lindsay.
Lindsay, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry, I was a bit close to the paper. Thank you for that then. Nice to see you here. We haven't got the report for the tourist gentleman here, have we, Philip? No. Yeah, bearing in mind, I think it's the only outlet for what that department does. It's a shame he's not here. In which case, we'll come to the last item on the agenda, date of the next meeting, which is the 18th of March. Would members find it useful if we could do a tour of the stories of Lynn beforehand? Have you all done that recently? Yeah, so if we can arrange to 1 o'clock down there again and 2 o'clock up here. Okay.
Just to say, Chair, Dana Woolbright, who's our union curator based at Lynn, who also supports the curation of collections here, could help with that tour as well.
So if we can do that, we'll do that. And thank you for coming, and see hopefully all of you on the 18th of March.